all the discoveries starting from the beginning of the 20th century have just been demonstrating it is no more possible to explain the universe without a creator God.
You say that if it is true that everything began, the entire universe, with a Big Bang, as most perhaps scientists now believe, you think that means a creator God needed to be there to kind of kick off the Big Bang?
The reality is that there is a beginning of the universe, and this beginning, if there is a beginning, there is a God.
We are not bringing an absolute proof of the existence of God. We are bringing evidence.
Materialism has become an irrational belief.
The universe is very difficult to explain without a creator God.
Hello and welcome back to UnHerd. Can the existence of God be proven by the discoveries of modern science? That is the bold, you might even say outlandish, question posed by two French authors, Michel-Yves Bollore and Olivier Bonnassies, whose book, God, the Science, the Evidence, is out this week in English and has sold something approaching 500,000 copies in its original French edition. We thought this was exactly the kind of thing to dig into. We've had Richard Dawkins on this show very recently. We've had theists. We had Ayaan Hirsi Ali telling her conversion story, Nick Cave, Tom Holland. Most recently, we spoke to Paul Kingsnorth, who has become a Eastern Orthodox Christian. So if ever there was a channel that could straddle these two worlds of science and faith, we hope that it's this one. And I'm delighted that we've got both Michel-Yves and Olivier joining from France to talk us through some of their surprising conclusions. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's almost a big question as to where to start because the fundamental thesis is so broad in its scope. But roughly speaking, your book starts with a kind of cosmological viewpoint where you're looking at the makeup and the science behind the universe, its origins, its potential ending, and so on. And then you move through biology and evolution right through to a more biblical section where you're looking at Jesus and the biblical stories. So I think the sensible way to do it is to kind of treat each of those in turn. Let's start with the cosmology. You basically summarize where modern science has reached on the questions of the origins of the universe, the age of the universe, its nature, and how it might end. And this whole concept of the Big Bang and the potential thermal conclusion of the universe, where many people might think this is just hard science and not really connected to religion, you conclude from that it makes the existence of God much more likely rather than much less likely. Take our viewers through that logic.
Yes, it's very interesting to see a panoramic view of the history of the scientific discoveries, because during 400 years, from the Renaissance in 1500 to 1900, all the discoveries seemed to say that it was possible to explain the universe without the hypothesis of a creator God. So we know all these stories. It was discoveries of Copernicus and Galileo about the fact that the Earth is revolving around the sun and not the opposite. Then it was Descartes, Newton, and Laplace who were explaining that all the movement of the planet and stars were explainable very easily with simple equations and with laws. So it was not necessary anymore to have a God to explain how the stars were moving in the sky. So as I said, the philosophers, if we don't need God to explain all the universe, there is one reason which is very simple. It's probably that God does not exist at all. And then, as you said, there has been the discoveries of Buffon for the age of the Earth. And then also the evolution was very shocking at the 19th century with Lamarck and Darwin. And then again, it was possible to explain the world, not only cosmological views, but also life, with just simple laws. So at the beginning of the 20th century, there was a very powerful current of thoughts, which was materialist, and which has been translated into politics and even in revolution in Europe, a little bit around all Europe. I'm thinking of Russia in 1917, Italy with Mussolini in 1920s, Hitler in the 1930s in Germany, Mao Zedong in the 40s in China, and Spain in 1936. So people thought probably at that time that science would continue always in the same direction, which is explaining everything. And many scientists thought even that science could explain absolutely everything. And what is very surprising, and we are telling in our book, recounting in our book, it is the reversal of science. Surprisingly, all the discoveries starting from the beginning of the 20th century have just been demonstrating just right the opposite. It is no more possible to explain the universe without a creator God. And it started with mostly with cosmology, with the thermodynamic you have mentioned, which is that everything wears out, everything will have an end one day. Our sun will disappear in 5 billion years. It will be like it's a tank of gasoline, and the gasoline will be empty in 5 billion years. So the sun will just become dark and cold, and all the stars and all the universe. That's what the scientists call the thermal death of universe, and it has a very big implication on philosophy and the existence of God. Is that everything which ends has necessarily a beginning. And if the universe has a beginning, then it needs a cause. So we see very well where is the problem with the thermal death. But then just after the thermal death came the expansion of universe, which is well known by the public usually, with the Big Bang, which is also a problem of the beginning of universe. And then some other discovery like the fine-tuning.
Let me bring in Olivier Bonnassies here. So if you could take us through a couple of those key arguments. So the hypothesis of the Big Bang, which, as you quite correctly say in the book, is now widely shared among science, is not controversial. Why do you think that makes the existence of God more likely specifically?
As Michel-Yves said, for 4 centuries, science seems to be able to explain the world without the hypothesis of God. But a series of scientific discoveries changed totally the picture, and we can summarize in 4 things, 4 key facts that changed everything. What Einstein said, we are in a space-time where time, space, and matter are inextricably linked. You cannot not have one without the 2 others. First point. Second point, there is an absolute beginning. Michel-Yves was speaking of thermodynamics. You are speaking of Big Bang, but there is 7 different rational approaches that conclude that it's impossible that there is an infinite amount of time in the past. Third, there is a fine-tuning not only of the initial data of the universe, but also of everything in quantum mechanics, physics, chemistry, biology, and also of the 4 forces of the universe. The value and the ratio of the forces of the universe are extremely calibrated and regulated. These 3 discoveries, if you try to conclude something about this, it's very simple at the end, because if there is a beginning to time, space, and matter together, the cause at the origin of this emergence is by definition of a different sort, a different nature. It's outside time, outside space, and outside matter. So, and it has the power to create everything, and it also adjusted and calibrated everything so that we can be there.
I just want to make sure our audience are following the logic here. So specifically on the question of the beginning of the universe, you say that if it is true that everything began, the entire universe, with a Big Bang, as most perhaps scientists now believe, you think that means a creator God needed to be there to kind of kick off the Big Bang.
Absolutely.
That's the argument.
Absolutely. We have a very interesting chapter in our book about what we call the noir thriller of the Big Bang, because the first scientists who discovered the Big Bang in Russia, disciples of Alexander Friedman, were all persecuted and shot, and they went to the Gulag, and they had a lot of persecutions because they discovered a beginning of the universe, and it was impossible for the Marxist, communist, and atheist regime in Russia at this moment. Why? Because it's very simple. One of the first atheists, Parmenides, in Greece, he proposed a philosophical principle on which quite everybody is okay. Ex nihilo nihil. From nothing, nothing can come. So if one day you had absolutely nothing, you would have nothing around you. Nothing could exist. Parmenides look around him and he say, oh, something exists. So there was no time where nothing exists. Something has always existed. Something, and he conclude the universe has always existed. But there is another possibility. A God outside the universe existed and created the universe. For centuries, science has nothing to say about this. But as Michel-Yves said, thermodynamics, the Big Bang, the expansion of the universe, and a lot of things today change totally the picture because it's more and more clear. It's like when the fog's clear, you see the reality, and the reality is that there is a beginning of the universe. And this beginning, if there is a beginning, there is a God. Because you cannot imagine the beginning of time, space, and matter without a cause. Georges Lemaitre was a priest, and he was the one who, for the first time, imagined that at the origin there was an atom at the beginning of the universe. He said that immediately that it's what you have to understand. It's that it's not only the beginning of time and matter; it's also the beginning of space. As soon as you have space, you have time and matter. So the beginning of space is something absolutely crazy because what is around you is space. But the space was created in one moment. So if there is a beginning of space, of course, there is outside something like God.
I think many people would follow you up to a certain point, and even many scientists would be very humble about what we can say with certainty about the very first moments of the universe, or how to describe before, if that was the beginning of time. But I'm not sure they would agree with you that that is a positive proof for a creator God. And I'm wondering, is there room for a little bit more nuance here? Many of you even set out in various tables in this book that there are sort of two hypotheses. There's the materialist hypothesis, where all there is a mechanistic universe and nothing more, or there is a creator God at the beginning of the story. Many people, I think, probably exist somewhere in between those two columns, and they might say that, yeah, the mysteries are great and we don't fully understand them, even have the language to describe them, but that doesn't necessarily prove a creator God. Michel-Yves, what do you say to that? What answers do you have to the people who sit in the middle?
It's very important to understand that there are two kinds of proofs. There are proof and there are evidence. Proof is absolute. For example, proof is what we have in mathematics when you want to demonstrate the theorem of Pythagoras that we all know. This is an absolute demonstration, an absolute proof, which means that everybody agrees upon, and it will last for 1,000 years. Here in the real world, there is no absolute proof. So, as you say, and I agree, we have to bring a nuance. We are not bringing an absolute proof of the existence of God. We are bringing evidence. Evidence is something which is relative and on which you can disagree. But what science has been bringing during the 20th century, it's not an absolute proof, but it is a series of several independent evidence that the universe is very difficult to explain without a creator God. So exactly as you mentioned, today there is a scale with the two sides of the scale. On one side of the scale, we have many relative proof, which are evidence. We have many evidence that the universe cannot be explained without a creator God. And on the other side, you have almost nothing. So as a rational human, we have to make the decision of what looks more rational. Voilà. So it's not an absolute proof. It is a set of evidence.
Many people would spend time thinking about these same questions and looking at the same evidence and come to a very different conclusion. I mean, the vastness of the universe, the fact that it has this Big Bang beginning and potentially this very bleak ending where via entropy it basically just fizzles out, doesn't sound very godly at all. It sounds unrecognizably different from the vision of the universe that we are told in the Bible, in which we are at the center of it, and there is great purpose involved, and we end in the heavenly realm. Instead, the vision, I would say, we even read in your book is a very vast and cold entity where we are very irrelevant little part of it, and it has a kind of rather bleak ending. Olivier, what do you say to people who might think about the same facts and come to the opposite conclusion?
Yes, when you try to understand what is the mind of God and why he did things like this and not like this, you can interpret and you can have a lot of thinkings, but it leads to nothing because you cannot be in the mind of God. We are focusing on very special questions. The question of the beginning is a key question because 100% of the atheists, of the scholars, the philosophers, the thinkers, everybody who is atheist needs to imagine that there is an infinite amount of time in the past. It's really difficult, in fact, because as we said in chapter 7 of our book, you have 7 different rational approaches that said that it's very unlikely, if you want. So this is
why can't you be an atheist and believe in the Big Bang?
No, you can, we are discussing with a lot of top scientists, of Nobel Prize winners. We were 2 weeks ago in Princeton and Berkeley in order to have discussions with people. And we had, since 4 years, since the release of our book in France, we had more than 150 conferences and debates and a lot of articles and debates in the media also. What we conclude is that the atheists say, we don't know. We don't know what is in the beginning. But what we argue is to say, yes, we know that there is a beginning of time, space, and matter. And if you are rational, if you believe in the principle of causality, you need to have a cause. And this cause should be, by definition, different. So when we spoke with Nobel Prize winners a few weeks ago about this, they said, yes, you're right. God is a possibility. But us as scientists, we have to search a natural and scientific explanation different from God. But for the moment, we have nothing very convincing. All the explanations that were tried to explain first the beginning and second the fine-tuning of the universe, for the moment have so far failed or are very difficult to sustain.
This is not actually addressed in your book, but I'm just keen to know what you think. Do you believe that there could be other life forms around this universe? And do you think that is compatible with being a Christian?
If you read the Bible, if you are a Christian, you said that everywhere in the Bible that God created marvels much more than we can imagine. So it's totally in line with the Bible. The problem is that we are looking at all things from our point of view, and our point of view, we need to focus on question on which we can have answer with certainty. The two main questions that are a challenge for atheists are the beginning and the fine-tuning, not only in physics and cosmology, but also in biology, also in chemistry. So if you think to this, there is a new question, and this question needs an explanation, and the only explanation for the fine-tuning is the multiverse. Is that the setting of our universe?
I think we need to explain the fine-tuning concept a little bit. I wonder if I could bring Michel-Yves in as well. How would you best explain the idea of a fine-tuning in the universe or in evolution to an audience who's never heard of it?
So the fine-tuning of the universe is an idea which is quite simple. Our universe is built upon 30 numbers, 20 to 30 numbers. Numbers like, for example, we know a few of them, like the speed of light. We know that the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second. And we could just wonder why. And we could also wonder why, what would it be if the speed of light was a little bit faster or a little bit slower. It's funny because now we can do this kind of thing because we have mathematical models of the universe, and we can put into the mathematical models different figures and to know what would happen to the universe if the numbers and the digits were different. So there is another example of these 30 numbers, which is the speed of expansion of the universe at the very beginning. So it's very funny. We know now this speed very well, and we know the 15th first figure, the 15th first decimal of this number. And we know also, which is really crazy, that if we take the last one, the 15th decimal of this number, if it was one more or one less, then our universe would not exist. So it's very strange. And an atheist like Fred Hoyle, who is very famous because he is a man who has given the name of Big Bang to the very beginning, and he was an atheist. After seeing and studying the fine-tuning of the universe, he decided to change his mind, and he said officially that he has now a deist.
Yes.
So today, you see, even scientists can change their mind. In fact, there are only 51% of the scientists, top scientists, who are Christian today in the United States, and 45% who are materialist. So there are still, let's say, half and half. So the materialists, they still have a possibility, and their opinion is perfectly respectable, and we can accept it, except that they have to believe, as said Olivier, that our universe is eternal in a way or another. We don't know exactly how, but there was something before the Big Bang. And they usually believe that they are multiverse, which means that they believe there are billions of universe.
Yeah, I want to come on to the multiverse idea, but just to conclude this section on the fine-tuning argument, because really, as I understand it, what that is the physical universe itself relies on this series of very precise factors being in some kind of harmony. And if any one of them was different, as you described with the speed of light, somehow the whole material reality would not exist. And you then have a section in this book where you go on to talk about life and how life came about. And the same kind of argument applies there, which is it relies on such a sequence of such precise chemicals, temperatures, factors, that you come to the end of it, and I guess you have concluded that it must be by design, because if it's an accident, it's one hell of a coincidence. Olivier,
Yes.
is that a fair summary?
Yes. If you organize a lottery among all the human beings of the planet, 8 billion people, and you do this every week, and the first week, one guy wins, and he wins, and you interview him, and he said, yes, I have a lot of chance. But next week, the same guy wins, and the week after, it's always the same. So at the end, if you interview him and he said, I have a lot of chance, the police will come and say, no, we need another explanation. What we have in our situation is exactly the same. We are, as Michel-Yves said, there is 20 or 30 different lotteries that we won in the past because the speed of the universe, the incredible settings of mass and energy in our universe. Roger Penrose, an English Nobel Prize in 2020, he said that the probability that we have a universe with a distribution of mass and energy that allows us to have galaxies, stars, and life is 1 chance to 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123, which is an incredible number. And in our book, we have a chapter with 100 scientists with their quotations. And he said that the creator had to aim with an accuracy incredible like this. One very important apologist in your country is John Lennox. John Lennox from Oxford. And I asked him how this Roger Penrose can write something like this, that the creators has to aim with such an accuracy, and say that he is not a believer. And John Lennox told me, you cannot imagine the pressure of the academic scientific world. Because at the end, many people like Roger Penrose, like Fred Hoyle, like Michel-Yves said, they discover in the universe incredible coincidences. And in our book, I can tell you that among those 100 scientists, most of them are atheists or agnostic, but they are all speaking of God, of miracles, of incredible coincidences. All this was discovered in the last 15 or 16, 60 last years. And those new questions have to be explained, and the explanation of a chance does not work, in fact. That's why we are the people, we will speak of multiverse, but the multiverse cannot explain the beginning. And for the beginning, you have people like Stephen Hawking, for example, saying that because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. And John Lennox said, nonsense remains nonsense, even when it's from a top world famous scientist. This question of the beginning, for the moment, has absolutely no explanation on an atheist point of view.
Michel-Yves, let me ask you, is there not an alternative explanation for this? I feel like there's almost a trick of perspective of looking at the universe and all of its laws and variables as it is, and observing how they are all mutually dependent. And therefore, it is true to say that if just one of them was slightly different, the whole thing would collapse. But if this system of being has evolved over so many billions of years as collectively, gradually, and relying on those laws and principles as they evolved, that's what you would expect, isn't it? I wonder whether there's a sort of slight trick in the way of thinking through that fine-tuning argument, because as existence has evolved, all of the different variables have been able to rely on each other. I don't know if I explained that very well. It's very hard in a podcast format to get into these kind of questions, but if all of the rules of the material world and the gradual evolution of the living world had so many billions of years to come into being in mutual dependence, you would expect that if you changed one of those variables, the whole thing would collapse. Does it necessarily prove a creator?
Materialism is a belief. It's a belief like any other one, and it's a respectable belief. I have person in my family who are. I'm a Christian, but I have a son-in-law who is agnostic or atheist. So it's a respectable, and we can be very good and love each other for sure. What is important is for materialists today that they realize that to be coherent with what they believe, they have to believe themselves in plenty of really weird things, very strange things. They have to believe first that our universe is eternal in one way or the other. We don't know exactly, but it is eternal. When, as Olivier said, we have today more or less 7 different evidence that this is not possible. But they have also to believe, because it's the only way to explain the fine-tuning, is that we are in the lucky one and that there are billions of universes. So, in fact, today, and you have also to believe that life is appearing naturally from matter, which today seems very improbable. So, if you want to be a materialist today, you have to believe many strange things. It is important for people, I think, just to realize that you have 2 possibilities in your life, is to be a materialist or to believe that there is a creator God. You have to compare, as we just said, the 2 sides of the scales. And we believe, and this is our book, we believe today that the side of the scale, which all the evidence we have today, is that what is highly probable is that there is a creator God, and what is highly improbable is that the universe exists by itself. Probably, voilà. And our book is easy to read because we have been perhaps in science, in question of science, which were a little bit complicated just a few minutes ago. It's important for the auditors, for people who are listening to us, to know that all these things are in fact quite simple, and our book is easy to read. It's easy to read, it's easy to understand, because it's basic questions. So voila, we our wish is that everybody who is wondering, is there a creator God or not, could find in our books, in one volume only, everything that science and reason can say today. Voila, this is our aim.
So I think it's a good moment to move on to almost the second big claim in your book, which is, having left aside the cosmology and the biology and the big picture science, you then zero in on the Christian story, the emergence of the Jewish people that you call the chosen people, and the story of Jesus himself. Olivier, what is, do you think, the most powerful evidence that not just general theism, but specifically Christianity, has a rational proof behind it?
In fact, we are speaking of Jesus and the Bible and the Jewish people only in the goal to answer a very limited question: is there a creator God or not? Our book is an investigation about this limited question with only one compass, one angle, rationality, and we are looking at 12 different fields of knowledge, independent fields of knowledge, because, as Michel-Yves said, we have not proofs, we have evidence, and it's when you have a lot of evidence converging in the same direction that at the end it's something convincing.
But
So
give us
we
some
are
of that evidence with regard to Christianity specifically.
Yes, what we are pointing in our book is that if there is a miracle, or if there is a revelation, if there is a prophecy, then the thesis God does not exist is wrong. So we are looking, is there in the history of humanity evidence, enigmas on which we can have a look in order to see if you can imagine that there is only a supernatural explanation. So the case of Jesus or the Bible or the Jewish people or the miracle of Fatima are examples of enigmas that we share with the readers in order to ask them, what do you think is the most credible explanation? The explanation with God or without God? For example, the Jewish people, 3,000 years ago, they said, we are a very special people. We are elected by God. We are an eternal people. After 3,000 years, they are the only one remaining from the antiquity. All the other people have disappeared because they have not the same language, they have not the same religion, they have not the same country. Only one remains, the Jewish people. So is there by chance? Perhaps it's a possibility, but is there because they have a special relationship with God? It's another possibility.
So do you believe that the Jews are God's chosen people?
No. We don't say that at all in our book. We don't say it's a chosen people. We just,
I think the phrase is in the book. It's
not, but as a citation,
Uh-huh.
not as an affirmation from us. We just ask the reader a question, which is, do you think that there is a plausible materialistic explanation to the fact that the only people from antiquity which is left has been in exile 4 times, one in Egypt, one in Nineveh, one in Babylon, and then one in the rest of the world, and each time has been able to come back to his country, keeping his language and his religion and his land? Is that possible?
I would have thought that of all of the challenges in this book, that one is an easier one. I don't think you need a supernatural explanation for that.
Voilà, alors. We are all the jury, we are all the jury. So
do you personally believe, you're not making the claim here, but do you personally believe that the Jews are God's chosen people?
No, I don't want to enter in that. I just say that for me, it looks like very almost impossible that something like that has happened without a creator God, because it's so unlikely. But it's it is just a question. The decision is in the hand of the reader. The reader is the jury. We are bringing stories and evidence on the table, and each one will decide. And I understand that you believe that for you it's not abnormal. It's yes, it's possible. And in that case, you say yes, for me it's possible. And we have several chapters like this.
In the antiquity, all the empires, all the people think that the sun and the moon were divinity. We have this in our book. All the different civilizations said that the moon and the sun are gods. And the Jewish people came, very small people, and they said, no, we have a revelation from God. The moon and the sun, at the beginning, they will have an end, and they are creation. They are only there to give light. It was very unique. Nobody in the past said something like this.
You're saying actually that the scientific implications of the Hebrew and Christian story, or at least their version of creation, accords better with contemporary science than other ancient peoples. They were better scientists, essentially.
For centuries, nobody can say if the sun and the moon were eternal or not. The only people who said this in the antiquity were the Jewish people. And for centuries, nobody had the answer. But now we are sure 100% that the sun and the moon had a beginning. These very small people in the antiquity were right, and all the empires who have scholars, intellectual life, libraries, all those people were wrong. So, and it's not only about the moon and the sun, it's about 10 different things that we are listing in our book. What is the best explanation? Is it that there is a revelation, as these people said, or is it that they had a lot of chance, not only on one point, but on 10 different claims that they had in the past? For us, at the end of the book, we are not hiding the fact that we think that today the materialism has become an irrational belief, in fact, at the end, because there is so many convergence of so many evidence that for us, it's the conclusion, but everybody will conclude exactly what he wants.
Michel-Yves, how do you feel the last part of the book sits alongside the first part? Because for me, the frame is very different. We spend hundreds of pages in the context of the history of the universe and the vastness of the universe. And then we go into the Hebrew people, the story of 2,000 years ago, and so on. And it's somewhat of a leap. Olivier even said he's comfortable with the idea there may be many life forms around the universe and we are just one of them. I mean, are we to then think there is the equivalent of the Hebrew people in, alien species and the equivalent of the Messiah in other planets? I mean, how does the kind of vastness of the universe and our relatively insignificance in it sit with the centrality of Jesus and the Hebrew people in your story?
We have received many critiques about the second part of the book, and many people have been writing to us and say, how are you mixing in a book of science? Science represents 2/3 of the book. How can you add to a scientific a part which is not scientific at all? So this is what I would like to reply today, to answer now to this question. We are ordinary people. Olivier, I am an ordinary people, and everybody, we are ordinary people, and we are just wondering, does God exist or not? Even for me, I'm a Christian, but I think I need to have an answer also by science to that. So it's important to know that if God exists, it's a fact. If it doesn't exist, it's a fact also. And in that case, whichever is the case, all the fields of knowledge will necessarily point in the same direction. It's not possible, for example, that science could say God exists and philosophy could say God doesn't exist, or morality, or history. So if God exists, all the fields of knowledge must point in the same direction, to the same direction, which is the existence of God. So it would be unreasonable for someone who is looking to an answer to limit our book to science only. This is why, after the 2/3 of the book, which is science, we have 2 or 3 chapters about philosophy, because philosophy is important. And we have also a chapter of morality, because if God, for example, if God doesn't exist, good and evil do not exist either, because good and evil, if we are just, if we are just a result of chance and necessity, if we are just particles, atoms, etc., well, good and evil do not exist. They are just what we decide, but it doesn't exist. So we have these 3 chapters on philosophy and morality, and after we have some chapters about enigmas. Well, if people are just interested by science and then philosophy, they can stop the book here. But for those who are interested, I think we thought, Olivier and I, that it was interesting to put on the table some enigmas, enigmas. An enigma, if God doesn't exist, it cannot exist. There should be an explanation, a rationalistic explanation to any enigmas. So this is why we are presenting, I don't remember exactly how many, perhaps 3 or 4 enigmas, like who could be Jesus? That's an enigma. It's something very surprising. How this man who has done nothing, he has not made any war, he was not a general, he was not a writer, he has not left a book. So in some ways, he has done nothing. He is from a village which is unknown, and he died very young. How is it possible that the entire world today is split by his date of birth, 2025? It's a little bit strange. The Jewish people, if we were really looking for commercial, I must say that perhaps this is a chapter that we would have omitted, because especially today with the war, it's not the right timing. However, we believe it is a very strange enigmas, that the Hebrew, Olivier and many people are mentioning Jews, but Jews is not the right word. The right word is Hebrews. So it's strange that this people, this nation of Hebrews is still alive. And so we are bringing 3/4 enigmas. If people like it, we are happy.
Mm-hmm.
And we have received also many letters of people happy. So we keep it. And bon.
Olivier, let me ask you the final question, because we're going to be out of time in a minute. It does seem absurd to try to answer such vast questions in such a short amount of time. Maybe we'll have to do an event with you here in London where we can spend more time together. But do you believe that the reception that this book has had, which must have surprised even you, I would have thought, because it has sold a lot of copies and caused a lot of interest, do you believe that its reception is proof that somehow there is a resurgence of religious feeling? Do you believe in the religious revival as a real world concept?
We don't see in France a religious revival. We see something very small, but I don't think that there is nowadays a very strong religious revival. But what we say is that in France, it's perhaps the number of Christians are decreasing for decades. But it's very paradoxal, because today there is for us an increasingly number of evidence that said that God exists. We would like to have a debate, a public debate. That's why we are discussing with people in Princeton, Berkeley, and soon in Cambridge and Oxford.
And on UnHerd. Even more prestigious
On
than those.
UnHerd.
Yes.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
And of course with you. And we like this debate because we think that it's more and more clear, and we would like to test with others the vision of the world. But I think that the success of the book is the fact that it's up to date and accurate and very easy to read. And at the end, for us, it's rather simple. Even if science is complicated and there is many questions on which we don't have any answer, we have answer on a few questions that are absolutely decisive.
Olivier, Michel-Yves, thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
No doubt we'll continue the debates in the comments underneath this. Don't know whether our
Sure.
audience are persuaded either way, but it was very enjoyable to discuss. Thank you to you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Freddie.
That was Michel-Yves Bollore and Olivier Bonnassies, the two French authors of God, the Science, the Evidence, the Dawn of a Revelation, And within 45 minutes, I don't suppose we were ever going to succeed in proving the existence of God either way, but some interesting themes there. And let us know what you thought if you are able to leave a comment. Thanks for tuning in. This was UnHerd.